Remember, anything you did with me is 4 or 5 or 6. Okay, so we've reviewed all of the different time periods that we were, so to get you focused, which is important, these are the empires we're talking about to finish off this PowerPoint and this time period that we're in. Okay, so we were talking about being able to take care of all these big empire populations and what it takes to maintain the production of food. And so, of course, we start seeing and providing rewards for loyalty, elites and elites not working, lower class working, while all the rich people get to sit around and wait for food to come to their plates. So corvée was the French word I introduced at the review yesterday. And what is corvée again? Forced labor. So of those dynasties, the big ones that you mentioned, which are some of them that you could give examples that you know had corvée? Molly? Rome. Okay, but not all of Rome. The military. Remember, when they were off, they were forced to build the roads, the aqueducts, and things like that. So yes, definitely talking about the military contributing to building that. Andrew? The chimp? Yes, a big one because of the Great Wall. Almost that entire project was corvée labor required of the people by the state. What other ones? Any other ones? Those are probably the big ones that we said, okay? Or and even in Latin America, sometimes they, later on, especially in the Southern American regions, which evolves into the Vita system, having people from the community have to provide or contribute to maintaining different infrastructures. Slavery. Where are the big slavery empires? Rome, for sure. Another one because you've got the first slave revolt. Y'all remember that one? In Rome, the big slave revolt. What was that? Spartacus. Oh, yeah, Spartacus. Okay, but that was just a story. No, but it's not. Okay, so that's the first major slave revolt. It was pretty successful, even though it got destroyed or taken down. But what's the only successful slave revolt in history? Haiti. Y'all know that. Okay, where else had slaves? Greece. Thank you. Greece had slaves. So pretty much the Greco-Romans were big on slaves. Persians. Mine we'll get to. Persians had a little bit of slavery as well because remember the immortal army? Not all of them were asked to be in the army. It was kind of required, and as you talked about that. So prisoners of wars, when it says terms of slavery, we talked about prisoner of war, criminals in debt. It was not chattel. You weren't born into it, depending on what happened. Okay, so there's some we haven't. So Maya definitely has some slaves too because of prisoners of wars and things like that. But now we get into the other one. So we haven't really mentioned India yet, right? Rents and tributes, peasant communities providing production. So in India, we really don't see much corvée and we really don't see much slavery. But what are the commoners and peasant communities having to do? Produce food and give a portion of that food to the government, right? That land, the food tax or the land tax. And we see that in China too, where you're producing, whatever you're producing goes into that. So we get the idea of like rents on the land that you work or tributes. That's the other thing. Okay, so leaving India. What is what? Yes. Tributary relationships. Big in China because of Korea and Vietnam and like spreading out into those tributes. But where else are tributes big? Latin America. Right? The Maya are big on tributary relationships and alliances as well. So remember, tribute is where you expect somebody to see you as superior, but you expect them to either give you work, labor, people, something to show that they recognize. Persia as well, whenever they established the satrapies, having those recognized through taxes or whatever, and those kind of things. Even Alexander the Great, you could argue. So you've got peasant communities, families, and household productions, latifundia in the Roman Empire, where you've got in caste systems in India, once again, these ideas that you're working as an occupational group that's related to your family, and then jati, of course, coming out of the caste system and, being in these guilds types of things that will provide production for society. All right, all good things must come to an end. When I taught ancient, this was my final review essay, compare and contrast the fall and destruction of these empires. And my kids would have to pick two, and they would compare. So I put some obvious ones on the screen. This whole thing is you knowing why all of these empires fell. The political, cultural, social, economic, all of the reasons that brought them down. Okay, and not forgetting about our friend letter I, environmental damage was part of that, deforestation, desertification, soil erosion, not making smart choices in terms of that. And then, of course, the obvious, the nomad invaders, bringing down all of them. The Huns kind of were like cockroaches all over, called different things in different areas, Xiongnu in China, White Huns in Gupta, and of course they pushed the Goths into the Roman Empire. So the Huns definitely were a big force. But now you tell me, what are some other things? It can be any of them. It can be affecting all of them. What are other things that you remember bringing these down? Yeah, Andrew.
The Han had unequal land distribution.
Yes, land distribution. Yellow Turban Uprising. You know, the whole outcry of unfair land distribution. Peyton.
Peasant rebellion.
Peasant revolts in multiple areas, right? Whether it was land or other things, not getting food, you know, in Rome, bread and circuses to make you feel like you're eating, but you're really not. Yes, peasant revolts. What else? Yes, Trey.
Disease.
Disease, big one. Specifically, what disease for Rome and China, especially? Not yet. That's Middle Ages. Smallpox. Yes, there were outbreaks of smallpox that impacted China and the Roman Empire, devastating populations. But also, okay, you said Black Death, but there are outbreaks of plague in Greece. Remember, during the Peloponnesian Wars, Pericles and a lot of the Athenians fall victim to that plague. And then early Byzantine Empire as well gets an outbreak. We're not sure if it's bubonic. Of course, later during the Middle Ages we have that. So plague and smallpox, bring them down. What else? What about administrative difficulties?
Splitting the empire.
Oh, splitting the empire,
Yeah, and not just the Romans, but Persians. Remember, they suffer from that too. So expansion being a problem where it's too big that you can't control it anymore and having to divide it.
For the Persians.
Yes, and so, you know, Alexander the Great, right? He had to divide his empire up and split it between his soldiers. So that, not being able to deal with that. What other administrative difficulties cause decline?
Oh, in China, the warlords.
Yes. And vying for power within the courts, between the eunuchs and the emperors wanting to focus on things that were not about administration. Nero, the 5 bad emperors, you know, all of the major American emperors, 27 assassinations in 10 years, something crazy. A lot of bad choices being made in politics with succession or just being corrupt. What about cultural? We haven't hit on that. What are some cultural reasons for decline?
Religious tensions.
Religious tensions. Specifically, what religions brought down some of these? 2 major religions caused the decline of 2 of these. Christianity for Rome, right? And what's the one for China that starts problems? Comes in from the Silk Road. Buddhism, right? Buddhism will cause problems. So definitely cultural issues. And then people just caring, in Rome, remember, it's let's live it up, party it up. Let's not focus on anything else except ourselves, you know, and having those types of things. Debasing of coins, you know, not having effective military groups to be able to patrol the areas that they need. Once again, expansion is a big problem for a lot of different reasons. Gupta, decentralization, the government giving off territory to a bunch of different rajas and not really, you know, bringing it together in unification. So lots of different reasons for that and ineffective rulings. Okay. Oh my gosh, I've been just preaching on this all day. Chapter 12 in your book. If I think you have Love It, you did a mental map, okay? This whole chapter is important in the transition from time period 2 to time period 3, okay? The one with the Silk Road on it, right? Chapter 2 to 3, time period 2 to 3 is all about chapter 12. I don't prescribe you reading your whole book, but I do think it's important to read chapter 12. It is worth your time, or to skim the parts that you don't know. There is a lot in chapter 12 that is important, not just for time period 2, but for time period 3, and you're going to get some of that religious stuff in there and the fall of empire stuff. Chapter 12 is the end of this time period. It's called Cross-Cultural Exchanges on the Silk Roads during the late classical era. All right? It covers a lot of stuff about connections and making those points meet. Everything on this slide is chapter 12. You're expected to know everything, pretty much, that's on this slide. And it'll be the beginning of chapter 3. So, knowing that the Silk Road is both land and water and a basis for transregional, the communication, exchanges, knowing where the Silk Roads are, knowing that trans-Saharan African caravan routes are beginning at the end of this period and will pick up majorly in the next time period. Indian Ocean sea lanes, Mediterranean sea lanes, the major trade routes. You have to know all of these technologies. So talk to me now. What are some we don't remember?
Dhow ships.
Dhow ships, okay? Dhow ships are the boats, the predecessors of junks or treasure ships that are traveling in the Indian Ocean between India and China. We believe the large majority of them were constructed in Southeast Asia on the west coast. but also in Indian port cities. So they're going to be transporting that early porcelain, silk, some of the water-based luxury items of the Silk Roads. So Indian merchants driving those. Yokes, not egg yolk, right? Yoke is what goes around the animal's necks, oxen or horses, so that you can steer them. Okay, so it keeps them and you being able to control where they're going. Big wooden things that go drop down on their neck.
An adjective people use to describe me.
Okay. All right. What else? What else do we need reminders on? Stirrups. Where your feet go when you ride a horse in a saddle, right?
I live in
What's your business?
Texas.
I didn't know that either.
Okay, Molly didn't know.
That's my mom.
So, which one of the trade routes last through? Like, do these last through almost all the periods?
Yes, because it'll be the continuation of period 3.
Okay, so this is like through periods 1,
2, and 3. No, this is 2. Remember, we're in 2.
Yeah.
So it starts in 2 and it will continue on to 3. Okay.
Who created the Latin cell?
Good question. Who created the Latin cell? First of all, what does Latin cell look like? Triangle to help navigate when it's hard because you got to wait for the wheel. Close.
But
Arabia, okay? So, and even some people believe even maybe the Egyptians on the Nile had it first, but definitely the Arabian Peninsula, Red Sea, Egyptian area were the first to navigate with that. And of course, we already talked about everything like yoke, saddle, stirrups really are Indo-European innovations. Latin cell, we just talked about Arabian dhow ships coming out of the Indian Ocean trading of Southeast Asia and India. Horses, mainly Central Asia. Oxen, mostly indigenous to Europe. And so remember, no oxen in North America yet. So we have llamas in Americas. Camels, Middle East and Africa, right? Okay, and then of course we have dromedary and carrier camels in Central Asia. Camels are kind of everywhere. Yeah.
is the junk thing?
It'll come around the end of this period. Yeah, the treasure ships, right? Because the Ming Dynasty will build those. Okay, so now, with these trade goods, we start seeing the exchange of people, which of course slaves, and then of course the migrations of people, technology, religious, cultural beliefs, food crops. Let's talk about that because we're good on Columbian Exchange because everybody wants to go to Columbian Exchange. But what are some of the specific crops? Think of those empires we just talked about, Han, Roman, Persia, whatever. What are some specific food crops that you remember learning about during this period too? Wheat, rice in China, tomatoes. Okay, tomatoes not so much, but what in America? There's 2 in America. Maize and potatoes. Maize and potatoes in North America. Not so much tomatoes yet. But what about the Mediterranean foods? Olives, dates, citrus.
Wine.
Right? Yeah, so in terms of that, olive, dates, and citrus. What about Southeast Asia and India? Spices, right? Sugar comes about in this time period from where? Persia. Okay? Coffee, Ethiopia. Chocolate, cacao, Americas. Okay? So this is where we have to start thinking about those specific foods that are going to be traded as commodities, right? Okay, we talked about domesticated animals. We talked about diseases. CONAUT in review yesterday, somebody reminded us, what is a CONAUT, Q-A-N-A-T?
Underground.
No, that's a key food.
just
It's an underground irrigation system in which empire did we say? Persia, right? Drilling a hole in the hills and mountains to catch the water. They believe that's where Osama bin Laden was hiding for all those years. They couldn't find him in old CONAUT systems in Afghanistan, which would be because there's so many, they're extensive.
So is that through all the Persian dynasties?
Yes. And then the Mongols go through and destroy them later. But yes, in the Persian, Achaemenid, Latin, and Sassanid.
Wait, would that be economics or no? That would be.
It's human environmental interaction. Aqueducts.
Boom.
And what are they?
They're like
On top irrigation
Water.
systems. Right. So both CONAUT and aqueducts are both irrigation systems. One's underground and one's on top. Aqueducts in Rome look like bridges that are connecting, bringing fresh running water, right? Mining, knowing that mining is definitely a thing. We already know iron, we already know copper, but also gold, silver in the Silk Road, Tashkent, Central Asian silver mining during this time period. A lot of people forget about that and they want to focus on gold and of course copper and iron, but there's definitely more increased mining efforts being made throughout this time period. We already talked about smallpox and affecting and the bringing down of Rome and China. Zoroastrianism we talked about the other day. Oh, here comes the stumper, Manichaeism. Who, what, when, where, religion. Mani's the founder, good. What is it?
Is it like the good and evil?
Yes, that's why it's mentioned with Zoroastrianism, right? These components of ethical living. Okay? What is it blended with? Like, it's kind of mixed. Remember, it's a syncretic religion for sure. By the way, chapter 12, the whole slide, right? Anybody remember anything? I'll give you a hint. Manichaeism, what? It's in the Middle East, so it comes out of the Persian region as well.
It's from the Sassanid.
It's like-
Sassanid Empire,
Is it based on
yes.
Buddhism?
Yes, there's Buddhist elements of ascetic lifestyle, giving up, living like a monk, that's personal comforts, getting rid of those, the emphasis of not having good clothes and rich food, personal comforts, depriving yourself of those, dedicating yourself to prayer, fasting, so other components of Christianity too, okay? So really Buddhist and Christianity and also a little bit of animism, okay? So, but Sassanid, you're absolutely right. It comes out of the Sassanid Empire. There is a great 2 paragraphs, 2 gold sections on page 248, Manichaean ethics and the decline of Manichaeism. Same page, 248, if you've never learned about Manichaeism. Real easy, quick to go over fast. Yes?
Question. So about the gold and the silver, was this the time period before the Trans-Saharan trade, like the Mali
Leading
and
into
stuff?
it,
So it's leading
yes.
into it.
So period 3 will be Mali, Songhai, Ghana. Yes.
I
But we
mixed
do
it
have
up.
gold in Nubia. Remember, so there is, the
And
gold
then,
trade going on in that, and Maya and Latin America and North America.
Is Mansa Musa later?
Later, next time period. Y'all love Mansa Musa, but we're not there yet. Okay, so required examples of transformed religious and cultural traditions. Transform means changing, right? So the big ones that are changing, quote, evolving as we go, Christianity, Hinduism, and Buddhism. What does it mean by that? How are they transforming? Yeah.
Christianity sort of use Judaism.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's in the beginning. But it's already established. I'm not talking about the founding of it. I'm talking about the transformation. So we established them in the beginning or the end. But what's going on now,
As
Aaron?
it spreads, different people start
Doing what with it?
like
Changing it or modifying it.
Like-
Gnostics, Coptics, the Nicene Creed. What goes in the Bible? What is the Bible? What's not the Bible? Orthodox, Nestorian Christianity. So transforming based on the little nitpicks of what you believe about certain things, turning into early denominations and early religious sects or later even cults, right? Hinduism doesn't change as much, but we see a revival of Hinduism with the Gupta dynasty and what becomes popular Hinduism, right? So that people start focusing on smaller deities to be the focus as opposed to one. So what is it, the Shivites, and whenever you have just focusing Vishnu or Shiva, and the little ones, and popular culture in providing literature movements to promote the religion. Buddhism as well, we learned about this. There's transformations of that. Ashoka, right? Mahayana, Zen, modifications as they go and transform and spread. And a lot of that has to do with the commerce, right? Blending it to fit what you want, as you go, the transformations by the regions. And then, of course, the LEQ that can cause you the most stress and anxiety, if that is the LEQ that you get. Continuity and change over time, that's where our research paper was at. Nice structure, intro, change, continuity, conclusion, but do you know what you're talking about? So at the end of each of these periods, you have to ask yourself, what are the major changes? What are the continuities? And this is time period 1 and 2, I comboed it. But I forced you to do it on your spice chart sheets. Remember, at the end of each time period, you did SPICE. You wrote your sentences in bold underneath the charts. You did not do that last year, so it would be good practice for you in a group to go back to periods 1, 2, and 3 and see if you can do the major changes and continuities for the spice letters so that can give you practice, because those essay topics for CCOT, if you get that, will be spice. You will be asked to look at changes and continuities with some aspect of spice, so being able to brainstorm them is important. And these aren't all of them. We could have had Rise of Empires on here. We could, it's not just Decline. There's a lot of different things that you could do. Continuities are hard, but not hard to come up with. Come on, migration, war, trade, that's all time periods. But then you have to say, for example, Bantu, Indo-European. You can't just say trade was continuous. For example, the Silk Road, you have to be able to back that up with the specifics. So you can usually say, okay, patriarchal, war, whatever, but now give me examples of that. So that's going to be important. We are done with periods 1 and 2. So we are switching to, that is first semester last year. Done. I know. Aren't you excited?
Now than I did when you were in class.
We should have just done this review.
Start it out. Okay.
We don't even need
No, we
that
should
full
excuse
year.
that. This is our time.
So this is the one that we are not, well, students tend to fluff out on, okay? And so notice I called it Middle Ages, not medieval, because medieval implies European history, right? Middle Ages is more of the global changes. So we're definitely in Common Era. This is second semester last year, the entire second semester, hopefully. Good news! The first slide is continuity. I think Camilla brought this up. Aren't they the same ones? Yes. Notice required examples of existing trade routes. So the same ones that we just talked about from time period 2, chapter 12, right? Same thing. It needs you to acknowledge that those stay the same. And so I'll give you a minute. The cities are what's going to knock you out. I'll let you highlight the ones because for those cities you have to know where they are and why they're important.
How could, why do we need to know where? Like, in what sense?
Because you
is
get
that-
maths on stimulus questions.
And then we
And
have
they won't
to
always tell you
know-
where they are, why they're important. That'll be your test. And you can have stimulus, you can have maths on SAQs on short answer questions and stimulus multiple choice. And DQs.
Sweet and Tang and Song were last year, right?
Sweet Song and Song are this time period, yes. Sweet Song and Song are time period 3, yes.
I did my research paper on the
That's
time.
good.
Oh
Try
no,
to-
we need to sing the song that the slide
Yes.
taught.
It's on
Oh my god, we
YouTube.
learned it too.
It's on YouTube, the Chinese Dynasty Fair Jaka. Yep, it's a good review, because you need to know, like Jonathan Mitchell last period, he's like, I just call it all China. You can't just call it all China. You have to know which specific empires go with each time period. Okay, so even the title, expansion and intensification, meaning that they exist. We're expanding, we're intensifying on things that already exist. So whether it's technology, transportation, commercial practices, we're growing in these. So it's getting bigger. So we know, we already talked about Silk Roads, Mediterranean, Trans-Saharan, Indian Ocean basins. All of those are growing. They've already existed, continuity from period 2 to 3. Now, let's look at those cities. I want to know where it is and why it's important. Start with Novgorod. It's what? Northern Europe. Well, specifically, not really Europe. Where is it? Russia. It's Russia. Or old Russia, Kievan Russia, before Mongols, Golden Horde region. Okay, why is Novgorod important? Because this is the first time we start talking about Russia. Hanseatic Trade League, yes. You have to remember, and that'll be on the next slide if you look ahead. The Hanseatic League was huge for the Vikings, Mongols, and Byzantine Empire. Trading in furs, fish, white slaves, human trafficking, lots of things going on. From London to Novgorod. That was the biggest trade network that we see in North Europe, Russia area. Timbuktu,
Africa.
specifically where?
West Africa.
West Africa. This is your Mali Mansa Musa. Okay, Mansa Musa made Timbuktu popular because he brought back a lot of gold. That big mosque that looks like a sandcastle, that's there. Books were traded extensively in Timbuktu. Capital of Western Empire, African empires, Ghana, Mali, Songhai, right? Swahili
That's
city-states,
East Africa.
that's in East Africa,
That's in
East
Africa.
Coast.
That's the ones that trade with India.
Yes,
Islamic
big time syncretic blendings of Islamic beliefs. We know there's evidence of coral mosques being built, so Islam is impacting Africa profoundly. What are they trading? Gold from Zimbabwe, ivory, slaves, and getting those things, and we know the evidence from them being there. Who can actually name an actual city-state? There's 3 big ones. Mogadishu, which is still around, yes. What's the one that starts with a K? Kilwa, Mogadishu, and Mombasa. Those are the 3 big ones. East African. Sinbad the Sailor and the stories of 101 Arabian Nights, a lot of that originates in that trade network between the Arabs and East Asia. We think also China was there, Cheng He. Where did he get that giraffe that ended up in China? From the Swahili city-states. Guangzhou, China, where on a map?
East, southeast.
Southeast. So it's kind of like in that little belly part of China, right? What famous European Italian was there writing about it? Marco Polo. Okay, this is one of the first times where he talks about how big, and the population's over 1 million. He's impressed how the Chinese can keep up with it. And it's one of their major southern trading ports during this time. Calicut, India, definitely. I believe it's the west coast. Another big entrepot trading. Baghdad, Iraq, but it wasn't called Iraq back then. What caliphate was it? Capital of which caliphate? Abbasid, which replaced which caliphate that had their capital in Damascus? Umayyad, right. Umayyad are kicked out and they go to Spain. Abbasid, Baghdad, Harun al-Rashid, House of Wisdom, all of those things hopefully coming back to you. Malacca, we did our first hot seat on these little cities. Indonesia, Southeast Asia,
Spicy city.
spices. Venice,
Italy.
Marco Polo, Italy, trading big. The not dark age part of Europe, right? Tenochtitlan, not Teotihuacan.
Oh.
Aztecs are
Nice.
finally here.
Nice of this.
Period 3, Inca and Aztec, right? Tenochtitlan, Chinapas, Mexico City, Cahokia. Ooh,
America.
it sure is North America. Where?
South.
Illinois. Okay, so if you look, they're usually affiliated with the mounds, the serpent mounds. They kind of look like snakes, whatever the case is. But yes, they were big, I think, on the Mississippi. If you look, a lot of trading going on there. But North American, and all of these are listed together because they are all trading cities. What is another nice French word you learned to call these? Yes, entrepot. E-N-T-R-E-P-O-T. You need to know that. They'll use that. E-N-T-R-E-P-O-T. All of those are entrepots.
Wait,
E-N-T-R-E-P-O-T. Y'all can impress Madame with that today. E-N-T-R-E-P-O-T.
I think there's a certain.
There's an accent over one of the E's. And I don't know about the O's. You have to check that out.
Wait, question.
Yes.
No, when you said Novgorod traded with who's like it was London to there.
London to Novgorod in the Hanseatic League, which is on the next slide.
Oh,
Yeah, in parentheses,
This
right?
was right. The bells aren't ringing today.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so it's time. Oh, okay, good. Real quick, let me finish the slide. We can break, real quick. Okay, Mesoamerican Indians, Aztec, Inca, trading with each other, even Cahokia. Luxury goods, quick, give me some luxury goods. Silk,
Ivory.
porcelain, spices, ivory, slaves, gold, anything that rich people can afford, poor people cannot. Caravan organizations, we'll talk about caravanserais tomorrow. Credit and monetary, we'll talk about tomorrow, next slide. Boom, let's go.
Speaking of the Incas, has anyone ever had Inca Cola?
Oh, yeah.
That's so good.
You can go to the Coca-Cola museum in Atlanta and you can try all of the different Coca-Cola brands all over the world. That's cool because they have it divided by region. And Inca Cola is so good. Yeah, and it's at the end, so you gotta take it easy. Just like drink it little.
Yeah,
There's
you
like
can make your way
Oh my
around.
gosh, like